I was halfway through making breakfast when I heard the grinding sound of metal outside my window. At first, I thought it was construction down the street, but the noise grew sharper, closer, like power tools tearing into something that didn't belong to them. I dropped the spatula, rushed to the front door, and froze. 3 men in identical green polos stood at my gate. One had a bolt cutter, another was prying at the hinges with a crowbar, and the third had a clipboard tucked under his arm like he was running some kind of official inspection. They weren't construction workers, and they weren't city employees. They looked like actors in a bad play, rehearsing a scene where they pretended to have authority. "Hey," I shouted, stepping onto the porch. "What do you think you're doing?" The biggest one, thick arms, shaved head, kept wrenching at the fence like I hadn't spoken. The clipboard guy finally turned toward me with a smirk. "Routine safety compliance," he said flatly. "HOA directive." "I never got any notice," I shot back. "You can't just show up and destroy my property without warning." He shrugged. "We don't need paperwork when there's a safety violation." That was when the alarm bells started going off in my head. I'm not a lawyer, but I know enough to recognize when someone's bluffing. Real authorities bring paperwork, badges, court orders. These guys had polos, bolt cutters, and an attitude. The gate gave way with a crack that made my chest tighten. My dad built that fence with his own hands 30 years ago, staining the wood in the summer heat while I fetched him lemonade. It wasn't just lumber, it was part of our history, part of our home. And they had ripped it down like trash on the curb. "Stop," my voice cracked as I stepped off the porch. "You don't have the right to do this. Show me your identification, now." The young one, barely older than my students at the high school, shifted nervously. I noticed he had a small body camera strapped to his chest, blinking red as it recorded. For a second, I wondered if this was all for show. "You're obstructing official business," the clipboard man said. "We'll call the police." It was absurd, me being accused of obstruction on my own land while they destroyed my fence. My hands shook with fury. For a second, I actually considered grabbing the baseball bat from the porch rack. But before I could move, another sound split the air. The screen door creaked open behind me. My father, Thomas, stepped out, still in his flannel robe, gray hair sticking out at odd angles. He didn't say a word. He just set down his coffee mug, walked to the shed, and dragged out a long, heavy case I hadn't seen him open in years. The intruders paused when he unlatched it. Inside lay the Winchester rifle my grandfather had carried hunting back in the 70s. Dad set it on the porch table, not aiming it, just letting the sunlight catch the polished barrel. "Coffee on my own property," he muttered, settling into his chair. The effect was immediate. The bolt cutter guy froze mid-swing. The clipboard man's smirk twitched. Even the young cameraman lowered his eyes. For 30 long seconds, nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then the clipboard man cleared his throat and muttered, "We'll be back with proper authorities." "Looking forward to it," Dad replied calmly, sipping his coffee. They left faster than I thought 3 men could move, tossing the tools into their truck and peeling down the street. But the way they glanced back at our house made my stomach sink. This wasn't finished. By noon, the footage was everywhere, not just from the kid's body camera, which, as I later learned, was live streaming, but also from neighbors who filmed the standoff from across the street. Dad sitting with the Winchester had gone viral, twisted into a dozen narratives. Some painted him as a dangerous vigilante. Others hailed him as a patriot defending his land. The truth was simpler. He was an old man with steady nerves protecting what was his. Within hours, reporters showed up. Satellite trucks lined the curb. Strangers messaged me threats, while others begged for interviews. I was overwhelmed, but Dad seemed unshaken. "Let them talk," he said, eyes steady. "Noise won't change what's right." Still, I couldn't sit idle. I started digging. Real HOA actions require notice. 30 days, hearings, written documentation. I searched city records, county records, state filings. Nothing. No violations under our name, no hearings scheduled, no legal backing for any enforcement. These men hadn't been following rules. They'd been following orders of a different kind. The answer came a few days later. Buried in permit applications at City Hall, I found it. Pinnacle Development. A massive project called Cedar Heights Expansion. The blueprints showed road widening, access routes for heavy machinery, and right where the map marked a bottleneck. Our property line. Our fence. Suddenly, it all made sense. This wasn't about safety or aesthetics. It was about clearing the way for a corporate land grab. They'd decided intimidation was cheaper than eminent domain. When I showed Dad the permits, he nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. Professional thieves hiding behind community badges, he said. That means they won't stop until someone forces them to. We built a plan. I documented everything. Photos, videos, copies of permits. We installed cameras around the property, every angle covered, and I created an online group, inviting neighbors who'd faced similar harassment. The stories poured in. Fences cut down, sheds dismantled, driveways marked with spray paint. Every family targeted lived on or near Pinnacle's proposed development path. It wasn't incompetence. It was organized fraud. 1 week later, Deborah Richardson, the HOA president, showed up herself. She came dressed like a corporate executive. Crisp suit, leather briefcase, flanked by 2 men in black coats. She knocked like she owned the place. "Mr. Hayes," she said when I answered, "we need to discuss the immediate surrender of that unregistered firearm your father displayed." "Unregistered?" I barked out a laugh. "That rifle is a family heirloom, properly documented, never left our land." Dad appeared behind me, calm as ever. "War relic, legally owned, staying right where it is," he said. She opened her briefcase, sliding out papers that looked official until you noticed the lack of letterhead. "We have authority to confiscate dangerous items that threaten community safety," she declared. "Then show me your badge. Show me a warrant," I snapped. Her silence was louder than any denial. The men at her side shifted uncomfortably, glancing anywhere but at me. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. These people had no authority, just costumes and props. They left empty-handed, but their threats lingered. That night I received an anonymous text. "Check Pinnacle permits. Follow the money." So I did. What I uncovered made my blood run cold. Pinnacle wasn't just widening a road. They were preparing to bulldoze half the neighborhood. And the HOA, whether complicit or bribed, was clearing the path by force. The breaking point came 2 nights later. At 2 a.m., every motion sensor on our property lit up, flooding the yard with white light. I jolted awake to see 3 figures in black hoodies, tools glinting in their hands. They weren't amateurs this time. They had lock cutters, power saws, demolition gear. I grabbed my phone, hit live stream, and shouted into the dark, "Smile, you're on camera." They froze under the lights like deer caught in headlights. The feed exploded with viewers. Dad stepped onto the porch, carrying the flag in one hand, the Winchester laid across the table behind him. He didn't need to say anything more than, "You're committing felonies on private land." The intruders panicked. One cursed, another fumbled with the saw, and the third bolted for the fence. Their faces were clear in the footage. Their plates, too. Thousands of witnesses saw them flee into the night. One of them, the young cameraman from before, hesitated. He turned back to us, guilt written across his face. "I didn't know," he said quietly. "I didn't know it was like this." Dad's voice was steady. "Then you know now. Choose better employers." The footage spread like wildfire. By dawn, national outlets were playing clips of our midnight standoff. And when Deborah tried to stage another compliance inspection later that week, her associate dropped a folder on our porch. Papers spilled across the boards, and there, clear as daylight, was Pinnacle's logo stamped on the documents. Cameras caught everything. The neighborhood rallied. People who had stayed silent came forward, sharing their own stories. An HOA board member handed over recordings of private meetings where Deborah and Pinnacle reps discussed strategies to clear obstacles and pressure families too old or poor to resist. The district attorney showed up personally at the next gathering. He listened to the testimonies, reviewed the footage, and announced, "This constitutes organized fraud. We'll be pursuing federal charges." Deborah's face went white. The same woman who had strutted up our driveway days earlier now looked like a cornered animal. Within weeks, arrests followed. Deborah pled guilty to conspiracy and fraud. Several Pinnacle executives faced RICO charges, their empire crumbling under federal prosecution. Families received restitution. The fake patrol members found themselves facing prison time. Even the young cameraman testified, his footage becoming the nail in the coffin. Our neighborhood rebuilt. Volunteers replaced our fence with something stronger, neighbors donating time and lumber. We set up a legitimate watch program, transparent, accountable, real. The online group grew into a national network for homeowners fighting fraudulent HOAs and shady developers. And Dad? He still sits on the porch each morning, coffee in hand, the Winchester displayed on the table beside him. Not as a threat, but as a symbol. A reminder that authority is earned, not faked. That rights aren't surrendered just because someone shows up with a clipboard and a lie. I sometimes think back to the moment that started it all. The sound of metal tearing into our gate at 8 a.m. If I'd stayed inside, if Dad hadn't stepped out, maybe they would have bulldozed us quietly, just another casualty of corporate greed. But we stood our ground, and because of that, others found the courage to stand too. The truth is simple. Fake authority only wins if we let it.